Hello everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. Before we start this particular video, I'll just like to have a quick look at our risk disclaimer and just remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades are actually taken, they're just shown for illustration and training purposes only. Also remind you there's a risk of loss in trading and investing. I'll say that another way. All professional traders know and understand, and more importantly accept, that losses can and will and do happen when trading. It's important to understand that losses can and will and do happen. Also remind you that all trade decisions are your own sole responsibility. Okay, let's now get on to the video. Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In this video I'd like to look at how we can use a nice little trade on filling the gap when we're trading the USE minis. So what do I mean by this? Well, on the USE minis, that's the ES, NQ, YM and the Russell Index, we tend to trade using what we call the day session only. In other words, from 9:30 to 16:15 New York time. In other words, just through what we call the day session. Now what can happen with this is when a new day starts, as you can see here, sometimes it will gap up or down from the previous day's close. Now there are two ways to trade this. There's either whether we have an inside gap, and an inside gap means whether the gap happens relative to, or inside relative to the previous day's trading range, or an outside gap is outside relative to the previous day's trading range. I'll cover the outside gap in another help video. So for this one here, let's have a look at how we can identify whether the gap's happened and whether it's an inside or outside. On our indicator here, on our MTPredictor 7.5, if I right mouse click and so show session breaks, you can see it identifies the start of the day and it tells you that it's an inside gap up. If I go to HLC and show high-low close, what this does is put the high-low and close on from the previous day, in other words the day before. So if I scroll back, scrunch it up a bit, you can see on this day here, which is Jan the 2nd, we had a gap up, but it gapped up inside relative to the previous day's range. In other words, the gap up was less than the previous day's high, which was up here, and less than the previous day's low, which was our brown item here. In other words, an inside gap. So how can we trade these? Well, inside gaps tend to fill. In other words, they tend to go back to the previous day's close. So when they have a gap up like this, what it tends to do is it tends to go back to the previous day's close. In this example it was 20.53.50. Now some people play these, but they have to play these with a wide stop because they don't know where the gap will start to fill from. And this is the advantage MTPredictor has, because we have our DP levels, which gives area of support and resistance. Remember, these are on the chart in advance, so they're there before the market even gets there. These give you areas where reversals are likely. So for example, on this day on the E-mini, just after the market's opened, which would have been here, you can go back to the prior swing. This is the last swing into the low. Right mouse click over this level here, place the DP level on, and as you can see it gives you a level. Remember, this was on the chart before the market even got up there. It gives you a level where the market is anticipated to reverse. And as you can see, we had a red sell bar right at this decision point level. So what this allows you to do is, knowing that it's an inside gap, knowing that inside gaps tend to fill, in other words they tend to go back to the previous day's close, which is here at 53.50, you can set up a short trade setup at this resistance level in and around our red sell bar to play this particular short trade. So you can right mouse click, risk reward, below the red sell bar, protective stop will be just above the high of that red sell bar, and your target, if I grab and drag it, would be at or just above the previous day's close. Again, it was 53.50, so you put it a tick above that if you wish. But this is the beauty of the MTPredictor software program, because you're trading, or you're playing the gap fill trade, but you're playing it with a big advantage in that you are playing it off an area of MTPredictor resistance in this example. Obviously if it's the other way around, you had a gap down, you'd be playing off MTPredictor support. But this is the advantage here, is you can set a trade up with a small controlled risk. In other words, we have our position sizing coming in here to keep our initial risk small and under control. In this example, less than a 2% risk on a $20,000 sample count. But can you see here how the decision point was placed on your chart in advance? In other words, that was the area of where you were looking to have a reversal because it was inside gap up, and it's told you that on our indicator here. We're anticipating the gap was to fill. In other words, the market was to drop back down to the previous day's close, which was here. But the great thing is that we actually anticipated the area of where that reversal or that market was starting to close the gap from, and that would be in our decision point resistance area. The red sell bar gave us the bar to then initiate your trade round. You place the manual risk reward on, and there's your trade. As you can see, it came back and closed the gap where the profit was approximately 6 times greater than the initial risk. So this is the beauty of adding MTPredictor into your gap fill trading analysis, because it allows you to come in with a small controlled risk. So in other words, allows you to have profits that are much larger than the initial risks. Ideally, we like to have this first target, or this target here, at least a profit of 2 to 1, but as you can see, this particular trade was much better than that at 6 to 1. So this is a great little trade that the more experienced of you guys can actually play using MTPredictor. Again, this is only applicable to the USE minis because we only trade these from what we call the day session, which is 9:30 to 16:15 New York time. So then you can actually have a gap between the previous day's close and today's open. So this is how to trade what we call the inside gap, where it reverses at our DP level into the previous day's close level. There's another trade setup that we can do which is around an outside gap. In other words, the gap happens but it gaps beyond the previous day's range, and that will be covered in another video. So a great example of a manual trade setup that can be used with the MTPredictor software program that allows you to have an additional trade setup. Again, this is beyond and above and beyond our standard automatic trade setups, but it's a great little trade to do if you're trading the USE minis.